Welcome back to The Athlete's Mindset. I'm your host, Tristan Gomez, and this podcast is all about diving into the mental side of sports. We'll explore the challenges, triumphs, and growth that come with being an athlete. Today, I'm joined by Nick Brink, a right-handed pitcher from Portland, Oregon. Nick played at the University of Portland where he dominated on the mound, earning first-team all-conference honors 2 years in a row. His performance led to him being drafted in the 7th round of the MLB draft by the Miami Marlins. Nick's journey hasn't been without adversity. He suffered a season-ending injury his sophomore year, forcing him to sit out and rebuild both physically and mentally. We'll dive into how he handled that setback, the mindset it took to come back stronger, and how he continues to grow as he transitions into pro ball. I'm so excited to hear Nick's story. Let's get into it. Nick, welcome to the podcast. How are you, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Back in Florida now. Tell us a little bit just about how the offseason was, first pro ball offseason. What did your routine kind of look like?
Yeah. So after I was drafted, I threw when I was down there. I got one start in low A, and then the offseason, it was pretty fast. Like I got drafted like middle of July, and all of a sudden I'm back in Portland. It's like second week of September, and I'm like, okay, like I just threw 100 innings in the spring. I just ramped up to throw a game in low A. So I took a lot of time off from throwing. I don't think I started throwing until the middle of October. So like the first part, it was all just like lifting, getting stronger and make sure I'm taking care of stuff in the weight room, stuff with like my diet, hydration, conditioning, all that stuff. And then I started throwing middle of October, and it was just like a very slow ramp up. I think some key things in my off season were at the very beginning. I went to Kent Morimatsu. He works at Roche. He trains a lot of professional guys. I went to him for some movement screenings for some arm care stuff, make sure I'm fully healthy for the entire season that's about to come up. And then I also started working with Driveline around November. And the reason I made that decision was I was fortunate enough, along with the other draft guys, to go to the Dominican Republic for a little bit. And we got to train at the Marlins facility there. Really great experience. And I met with one of the new pitching guys that we had hired. And now I think he's the bullpen coach for the major league team, Brandon Mann. And we sat down, we talked, went over my start in low A, what he thought I could do or like work on in the off season, like mechanically. And he's like, hey man, like I'm going to be honest with you. The best thing you can do, especially because you live 2.5 hours away from Driveline, is like go there, get the high speed and like get the mocap, get the high speed footage of everything. Like even though you'd probably not be training in-house all the time, like those mocaps are going to be so valuable for you because like I can see the mechanical efficiency or deficiencies in these videos, but they're going to find the exact things that you need to work on. And it was a great decision. I did my first like assessment, kind of found my baseline little bit in like probably middle of November. And then from there, they gave me an entire routine of throwing, lifting, conditioning. I just followed it to a T. I did my second mocap second week of November. And then since my report date was the very beginning of February, I couldn't do a third mocap. So instead I did some pitch design sessions, and those were equally helpful. Like I kind of revamped my entire arsenal. Like my stuff has never felt better. And I'm throwing harder. Yesterday in one of our bullpens, I was up to 97. Like the entire offseason was great. I took some time off and then really just made sure to attack it. And yeah.
Nice. What do you think were kind of those main tweaks or kind of things that you learned that got your velo up to 97? And kind of what was it? Was it a little tough going to Driveline now? Because you were kind of on top of the world, when you were at Portland, just kind of, you were the man, always having success. I know you're always trying to learn and stuff, but was it tough when you get there and, right when you get to pro ball or you have that first start and guys are already saying like, oh, you need to do this better, you need to do this better? How did you kind of approach that or handle that kind of feedback?
Yeah. I think I definitely went in with a mindset like, hey, like these are like some of the best baseball players like I've ever played against. Like the stuff that, I may have been able to get away with in college, like I might not be able to get away with now. And I also just had to think like, I'm no longer like on the top of the totem pole. Like I'm back at the very bottom. Like I'm back in low A. Like I have to work twice as hard to like get my way back up to where I used to be and to where I want to be. So I think going into it, I knew that, hey, like there's always stuff that I think that I can work on. And I think one thing that the Marlins really did a good job of was I was always connected with coaches who were helping me find things that I could work on. And then yeah, like from there, like I just had really good goals for the off season. Like they did a good job telling me, hey, like this is where you need to work on. And then same with Driveline, like they gave me a really good program. Like it got me into a really good spot. So I think I went into it with the mindset of like, I know that there's a lot to, like, I'm not going to come into pro ball and like come with the attitude like, hey, there's nothing I need to work on. Like I knew that there was stuff that I was going to have to change or stuff that I would have to adjust. So I was like, I went into like everything like with that mindset, like, hey, like I can get better here. Like I can always get better.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea that you brought up that you kind of were just at the top of the world and now you're kind of back to the bottom, trying to build your way up again. And I think that kind of just goes to show that if you kind of have that growth mindset or kind of that idea that you go in there that I'm at the bottom and you're going to work your way back up, you're going to have so much more success than you would if you just went in there like, I've had success. And I mean, like you see it all the time. There's aren't guys that, besides Paul Skeens, they get drafted and they're just in the majors just like right away. But I think that just goes to show kind of that growth mindset. So I want to talk a little bit about how you kind of ended up at the University of Portland and then just kind of how your career at Portland kind of played out. I'm not really sure how your freshman year was, but then I know sophomore year you have the injury, Tommy John, and then you come back your junior and senior year and you're just absolutely dominant. So kind of just walk us through that. Just start maybe in high school or even just your freshman year.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's, I think the whole reason I played at Portland actually started my freshman year. So a former teammate of mine, shout out Eli Morse. He was a senior at the high school that I went to, and he played at Portland, and I was a freshman there. And I never, like at that time, like my freshman and sophomore year, I never really considered or like even thought I was going to have a future in baseball. Like at that time, I was more excited to play summer basketball than I was summer baseball. And for me, there was like a very distinct moment where that changed. So my sophomore year, we made it to the state playoffs, and I didn't play in like a very dominant high school baseball league. So I was also the guy. Like my sophomore year, we go to playoffs and we got whooped. I mean, South Salem, they had I matched up with the Oregon State commit, Ryan Brown. He hit 2 bombs off me. They scored like 6 or 5 runs, like in 4 innings. Like got absolutely shelled. And I remember like on the bus ride back, I was thinking to myself, like I'm supposed to be the guy for this team. Like I wanted to do something special with this team. I feel like I almost let them down. So for me, like that was like a turning point that I was going to drop all the other sports that I was playing and I was going to focus solely on baseball. And then I started taking weight training more seriously. I just, saw whatever online resources I could, like Instagram accounts, like online coaches that put stuff out for free. Like I found a lot more baseball specific stuff. And I think that really elevated my game. I did some Baseball Northwest stuff. I did like their showcase, and then did well enough. They invited me to the Northwest Championships, and at the Northwest Championships, my coach for like my like area team was at the time Dave Tufo, who was the recruiting coordinator for University of Portland, I believe at the time. So he kind of got me more connection to University of Portland, and he invited me to the like winter camp that UP holds. So I went to that, performed like all right. It's funny. I always think about this. Like I tried out as like also like a first baseman, and like I look back on it, like I'm like 6 foot, 160, 170 pounds. Like I'm not a Division I first base. Like, but I just didn't know like that. That's just like I just didn't know. After the camp, I sent an email to Tino. And I said to him basically like, hey, like, what do you think? Like, where do you see me like as a player? And he said, hey, like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, you just got to get bigger. You got to get stronger. And you're not going to be playing first base for us. Like, because at the time they had, Sam Brown, Trace Tamaro, like other guys. I was just never going to play over those guys. So I'm going into my junior year of baseball. I'd just been doing a lot of like baseball specific stuff. And I think it was right after this tournament that my high school team we did in Las Vegas, Eli reached out to me and said like, hey, do you have any interest in playing at UP? And I was like, yes, absolutely. He connected me with Coach Lambo, and then pretty much things just kind of took off from there. I had a really good junior year. I was playing some summer ball stuff. Lambo saw me pitch against a community college, and he's like, hey, like I really love the stuff I saw. Took me to UP. We walked around the campus, sat me down, and said like, hey, like let's like, here's your offer, like, and basically like a week later, I committed to University of Portland and never looked back. It was like I was deciding between like one other school, and they like weren't making the effort to like come and see my summer ball games. And for me, I took it as like they're not making the effort to come see me, but like Lambo's always at my games. Like he's making that effort. Like I really respect that. And like, that's something that mattered to me. Like they're making the time to come and see me. So like, I want to, like, they're putting the time in for me. Like, nah, I think it's my time to, put in the work for them. So I committed, and yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like everyone just has totally different journeys when it comes to getting recruited. And, I think Portland, not even on my radar in high school. I didn't end up there until I transferred. But I think it's just kind of one of those low-end programs that you just never hear about. And then you end up there and there's just a great culture. And you realize like from the get-go, right? Like the first week I was there, I was like, this is the best decision I ever made. Just the coaching staff. I remember talking to Tony Boeto, and he said that it's very rare to find a school where like all the players really like the coach. Like all the players like the head coach, and not everyone's like, oh, I absolutely hate that guy, he's awful. So I feel like at a lot of programs, that's kind of how it is. Everyone's like, the head coach is making us do this. But I think at Portland, it's just a great culture, and definitely a place where you can kind of just be yourself and totally just a learning environment. So talk a little bit about, you get to Portland your freshman year. You pitched a little bit, right?
Yes, I pitched a little bit, and it was terrible. I remember my first outing was against UC Davis, like really bad. Like I was hitting guys all over the place. I was backing up curveballs, didn't have command, didn't have the confidence in myself. And then like my very next outing, I think it was a start against Utah Valley. I mean, nothing phenomenal. I probably went like one inning, maybe not even 2 innings or so, 3 earned runs, gave up a home run. Like, it's okay. I'm a freshman, it's my first start. But I think it was like the next game that really highlighted for me, like where I need to make some changes. And that was against University of Oregon at their place. I was first out of the bullpen after Jack Fulkins had started. And like looking back on it, I like walked out of the bullpen like with no confidence in myself. And it was weird. You could like see it as I was like approaching the mound. I was like jogging, then I'd start walking, then I'd start jogging again. It's like I didn't have the confidence. Like you could just tell. And it was terrible. I walked 3 guys in a row. I was crossing up the catcher. Like it was just bad. And so I didn't play for big remainder of the season. I got another chance against University of Oregon. They were kicking our butt at our place. I go in there out of the bullpen. I put up a 0. So I'm, feeling pretty good about that. But then, they get to me in the second inning, and that's it. And then I had one final outing. It was against Oregon State, who I believe was ranked like 21st, 22nd at the time. But the big thing for me was after my really bad, like first Oregon outing, I started seeing a sports psychologist, and I was just like, hey, like I'm not confident in myself right now. Like I showed her like what I looked like running out on that. She's like, it's almost like I felt like I didn't belong there. And so she gave me a few exercises that I started doing daily of just like, self like reaffirming to myself, like, hey, like you belong, like some breath work to like help me get focused in the moment, not thinking about my previous outings or thinking about what's going to happen if I do bad, like just getting myself into the moment. So yeah, it was like a lot of positive self-talk, a lot of breathing techniques to get myself into the moment. And I'd been doing those daily. So when it came time for my last outing against Oregon State, a big factor of this outing was I had like my exit meeting because we had this midweek, and then the team was going to go play. They had an away series. So the fact that I was told like early in the morning, hey, you're playing in tonight's game, like it really gave me time to like prepare, because the other times, sometimes you just hear Skip like, "Hey Brink, get on." It's like you just get rushed with like anxiety, and it's like this time like I was prepared. So I get into this game like after 5 pretty solid innings, and I remember I had my first 1-2-3 inning like in my career at UP, and I think I went like 3 shutout innings. Maybe there was 1 run, but at the end of the game, I got the win, and it was my first collegiate win. And then I just had so much more confidence in myself, like all of that self-talk, all of that getting myself like focused in the moment and like being prepared for the outing like ahead of time. Like it basically earned me my first college win. And then when I thought like, holy shit, I just beat Oregon State, they're a ranked team, I just took that confidence into summer ball with the Pickles, and then I just kept riding that confidence wave basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's just a good example of that. You don't need success really to build confidence. Like you said, you talked to kind of just a coach that kind of just mindset coach that just brought up your confidence naturally and gave you different ways to go into that outing. And prior to the outing, you're like, all right, like I just got to believe in myself. Like, what's the worst? I get shelled again. Like, so I think that just kind of goes to show that you don't need success to build confidence. But then once you do have that success after that, your confidence almost just skyrockets. And you're like, I can do this. I've done it once.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to do it a million times. Now onto a more of a kind of negative note. Your sophomore year, you're right in the highs. And then the season comes and you end up getting injured and needing surgery. Kind of tell me, what was kind of your thought process leading up to that game where you were injured? And then once you realized like, oh, my season's probably done, what was kind of your thought then?
Yeah. So I remember like I had came back from winter break. I threw a bullpen like inside the PNOV with Lambo, and like I had like a little bit of a velo jump. Like I was like sitting 93. Like I'm fired up. Like I'm ready to go for this season, just again, still riding the confidence. And then I was throwing in the inner squad that we had. I think it was on February 4th. I had like a solid first inning, but I remember I was sitting in the bullpen or in the dugout. I'm like, dang, my arm's like, it's kind of hanging. It's not feeling great, and I wish I'd spoke out at the time. But I go back out for the second inning and throw a few pitches. Like I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, I'm really have put a lot of effort into these. And then a couple pitches later, I felt like a pop in my elbow, and my arm was like kind of just like filled with pain. But I was like, I didn't want to like take myself out of the game. Like I just didn't want to do that. So I threw another one. It's at that point, like I just couldn't keep throwing. So I was taken out of the game. Chris, he did some exercises on me and said like, hey, like, either you have a really high pain tolerance or, maybe it's just a small tear. The next day I got an ultrasound, and turns out I have a really high pain tolerance. It was a pretty significant tear. I got an MRI the following Monday, and then by the next week I got full reconstruction on February 15th. And that's like when it hit me like, hey, you're not playing baseball for like another year, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, as you said, it kind of was like a negative note, and there were times where I was definitely down about it, but after I got the surgery, the first thing I wanted to do was just like get back to the field. Like I remember I texted like Nick Nygaard about this, and I was like, yeah, the first thing I wanted to do after I got the surgery was just get back to the field and just like hang out with the guys. Like even though I was doing flight scope for every single home game that season, all I wanted to do was just like be around those guys just because of the culture. Like even though I wasn't doing much for my rehab, like right at the beginning, it's just like it was just such a good culture and such a good group of guys. Like being isolated, and not away from them would have been worse, because like not even being able to like throw, like that's already pretty isolating. Like it's so easy to get into like a little pit of just like sadness and stuff. So for me, like I just wanted to get back to the guys, and I just wanted to start attacking my rehab. Like I saw this as an opportunity to, come back stronger than ever. And I started like a TikTok series of like what I did every day to like come back, and it as like a way to hold myself accountable. I did it for like a month, but I eventually stopped. But I remember like on the very first day, like I put in the caption, like day 1 of 365, because I had a 12-month goal, be ready by next season. So even though the series didn't last, like it felt a little daunting to think like, wow, I have 365 days left of this. Yeah. But my mindset was always just one day at a time. And I think that goes back to like the psychology or like the work that I did with like my breath and like getting myself back into the moment, just like one day at a time. And then this also builds on to so much other stuff that has been preached by Ferrati and by Lambo. Like you're just stacking days, like taking it one day at a time, and you're just stacking days and stacking days and stacking days. And for me, like taking it one day at a time and just making sure I wasn't trying to like rush my rehab, like understanding like, hey, like doing extra stuff today isn't gonna make me come back any faster. So for me, it was just I knew I had this opportunity ahead of me. Like, hey, like I can attack these next 365 days. Hold yourself accountable. Don't do anything more that you need to do, but make sure you're doing what you need to do on that day and stack those days. And my junior year comes around. I start the first game of the doubleheader against Utah Tech, and I basically just never looked back.
Yeah, during that kind of process where you were going through your rehab, did you feel like you ever had any doubts or kind of thoughts in your head? You were like, what if I don't come back as good as I plan to, or as good as I was prior? Did you have any of those thoughts going through your head, and how did you kind of deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I have those thoughts all the time, just like thinking, hey, like when's the pain going to go away? Like, when am I going to get full range of motion? Like, what are my pitches going to be like? Like, am I going to have to change who I think of myself is, or change myself as a pitcher to like, adapt to this? And like I said, like it's easy to have those doubts, but the thing that kept me from like not really like falling into that kind of like hole was the fact that, hey, like if I do everything that I'm supposed to do for a single day, and then I do that for every day, then I can like look back and I can say I gave it my absolute best. Like I wasn't overworking myself, but I made sure that I didn't miss a single day of rehab, of forearm exercises, of getting a lot of sleep, quality meals, enough water. Like I wasn't going to try and rush myself. I don't think that would have been smart, but I'm also going to make sure that I don't miss a single day of doing what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, that's kind of like what helped me like not fall into like too big of a trap of like, what if, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I almost want to kind of quote that I like is something similar to the confidence is what happens when you put in the work that makes you earn it. So you put in that work, you put in all that time and effort. And so at that point, all you can do is just be like, I did this. I did exactly what I needed to do. And I mean, in the end, it's definitely paid off for you. You show up junior year, making your first start, and it almost just takes off from there. I think in the fall, through a little bit, and then you were really throwing in the spring leading up to the season. And I think a lot of guys on the team were looking at you like, this guy's got it. Like he's going to go crazy. And then we start the year. Did you kind of have that feeling like in your own head when the season started, like this is my time to go?
Definitely the first game. Cause I remember like I got up on the mound at Utah Tech, and it was like before I started doing my warm-up pitches, I kind of like look around a little bit, and I was like, it's been like a very long time since I'd pitched in a collegiate game. And I mean, the last time I technically did was against Oregon State, unless you're counting summer ball and like the inter squad. So for me, it had been basically 2 years or little under 2 years. So I'm thinking to myself, like take it all in, like get yourself into the moment, but like you've earned this. And I definitely think I had a little bit more confidence that day, knowing that like I put in so much work that I earned like the opportunity to be.
Yeah. Did you, so talk a little bit about just the consistency that you created just throughout your junior season, and what kind of just your typical routine looked like just throughout the week. And then also, because you were starting, I think it was by the middle of the season, maybe even sooner, you were starting every single Friday, and you almost just secured that spot and seemed like you just dominated every single Friday. What was kind of your thought process once you got to that Friday spot and you just stay consistent the whole year? Like how did you stay so consistent?
I mean, I would say the consistency piece was just like, it was just like a culmination of like all the work that I'd put in before it. Cause I mean, I had a conversation with Skip like a couple weeks into the season, and he's saying like, hey, like you're pitching pretty well, but it's hard to have a starter who's at a pitch count 55. So I hope you understand the decision to move you to the bullpen. Totally made sense. Like I totally agreed with that decision. Like you can't really have your Sunday starter, especially when, if there's ever a rubber match, like I can only go 3 innings, 4 innings max. Like I understand that you want guys who can go deeper in a game. So I moved to the bullpen, started to build up my pitch count, and then trying to remember what starts I had. I think I had start against San Diego at their place, and then there may have been one more, but I think really the game that kind of secured me that spot was against Gonzaga. I think I started the rubber match after, I think, we went 1-1 in the series. Like, winner of that series put us, I think it was either tied for third or maybe like tied for second, but it was a very important series. I go 80 something, maybe a little more pitches, but I got pitcher of the week, my first pitcher of the week. And that's again, it's just like another confidence boost. And then I think that's what secured me into kind of like that Friday role. Cause I think we had the game Saturday against Gonzaga. And then I think the next game was the series against BYU. So we played on Saturday. So we went Sunday to Saturday. I pitched really well against BYU. And then from there, it was like, hey, like, you're going to be in the Friday spot. And that just, I guess, like, for the consistency piece, like I said, it was just like a result of everything else that I'd done up until then. And then from there, it was just like riding the confidence that I had, that I built up like since my freshman year, for that entire season where I pitched like that my junior season. And then from there, it's just like riding that confidence. And then also the fact that, Skip said, hey, you're going to be throwing on Fridays for us. Like, I always took Friday games like very personally, in the sense that, like, hey, like, I'm supposed to help the team, like, get the win. Like, I want to put the team on my back, and I want to get these guys a win so we can win every series for the rest of the conference. Like, I always took the Friday games like very personally. So it was part of it. Like, I'm ready to like go to war for these guys, and like I'm gonna put on the best pitching performance I can every single Friday.
Yeah. That kind of leads to my next question. I feel like in anything you do, you always are just kind of competing. I mean, you're like one of the best, if not the best ping pong player I've ever seen in my life. What's kind of your thought process when you are on the mound, like in that on a Friday night, and you're like, it's pretty much their ace going against our ace, and you're the guy on our side. Like, what's kind of going through your head to, one, keep yourself calm enough that you don't get too amped up, but also gets to a point where you're like, I'm about to go dominate?
Well, I've heard this from a couple guys now. Like, I have like a very quiet confidence. Like, I'm not, very like screaming or yelling or like very loud or anything. Like, it's a very like quiet confidence. And I think it's just like I have so much belief in myself that I can get any hitter out in the box. So for me, it's always just, at that point, it just becomes a competition with their ace, whoever's starting for them. Like, I just need to do better. Like, I'm so obsessed with doing better than you. And by the end of the day, like, I don't know. For me, it's like I just want to be the best player on the field that day. And I want to dominate every hitter. I want to do better than all of their pitchers. So I think my mindset is like even though it's, you might not see it like on myself, like, be like very calm. Like, I won't show a lot of emotion. There's a lot of self-belief that goes on within myself. And it just goes back to like staying in the moment. Like, that's kind of like what helps keep me calm, is like, I think I can do a good job of staying in the moment, or, like, let's say someone makes an error. Like, I don't let that affect me at all. It's very like someone made a mistake, but it's like, I'm not going to let that snowball and turn into something more. It's like, I have to pick up my teammate, because he, all the infielders, they've picked me up so many times. Like, it's my turn to pick him up. So, it's almost like it gets me into like a hyper focus mode. Like, when I need to pick someone else up, like, I'm almost even more locked in than I normally am. So,
yeah, I almost think you just have to, in baseball especially, you kind of have to care, but you don't. When something doesn't go your way, you kind of have to be like, that sucks, but how can I just move on from it as quick as I can? And I know you care about the process a lot and kind of just doing your job. When you're attacking a hitter, kind of what's your kind of process when it's kind of that one-on-one battle? Especially now that you're in pro ball, when you're facing guys who have, had enough success to be drafted and be where they are now. What's kind of your mindset when you're just going one-on-one with the guy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the mindset, like, it really kind of stays the same. Like, so part of the, like, I talk to myself a lot on the mound. Like, I'll put my glove over my mouth and like, I'm just talking to myself. Like, I'm trying to outline, hey, what am I trying to do here? And for me, it's always the same. Like, as a pitcher, it's so important to throw a first pitch strike. Just especially in pro ball, like, getting ahead of hitters, like, it's just so crucial. Like, going 1-0, you can so easily fall into like 2-0, and then it's like that's when batting averages, all the statistics, like it jumps in their favor. So for me, it's like, it's always about getting strike one. And one of the new philosophies at University of Portland, I believe, is get your 67. So win 2 out of the first 3 pitches. And for me, it's like, if I win the first one, then I'm so much closer to getting my 2 out of 3 than if I were to start 1-0, because then I have to win the next 2 in a row. Hitters are good. Like, I can throw, good pitches. They can put good swings on balls. So if I can at least give myself a good chance by going 0-1 or throwing a competitive first pitch, then that's always going to be the best way for me to have success, like getting ahead of that. There's definitely times you have to be like more careful, but I don't want to be pitching scared. Like, I have to know that, hey, like, my stuff is better than it was in college. Like, I should have the same amount of faith, if not even more, in my arsenal to get whatever hitter in the box is out. So yeah, I think my process is definitely like, get that first pitch, strike, win 2 out of 3 if you can. Try and get hitters out early if you can, so you can go deeper into games, but also just like trusting your stuff. Like, it's better than what it was, and you had success with what it was. You can have success with what it is.
Yeah. One thing I just recently heard was the difference between a loser's game and a winner's game. So pretty much that means is when you're thinking of like amateur tennis, like young tennis players, most of the time, the person that wins is who makes the least amount of mistakes. It's, kids are pretty much just like, all right, just hit it over the net. And at some point, they're probably not going to hit it over the net, and I'm going to score. But then when you get into professional tennis, you see people, like I'm playing against professional, like I have to make good shots. Like, I have to beat them. I can't wait for them to beat themselves, because they're not. So I think that kind of is a good idea, or kind of mindset in pro ball, is everyone's good. You can't go in there just thinking, don't mess up, and hope that they mess up. You have to go in there pretty much like, I'm better than you. I'm going to make this happen. And once I make this happen, I'm better than you. So you're going to fail. So that was kind of just one thing that I heard that I thought was kind of cool. And I think that kind of goes along with, as you grow older into, or the higher level you're playing at. And so now that you are in pro ball, it almost is like, you can't rely on other guys failing. You have to rely on you just being better. So I thought that was kind of, I think that's a great idea. Put it. Yeah. So going into that and going into pro ball, tell me kind of what the biggest difference between college ball and pro ball. You were only there for a few months after you got drafted, but talk just a little bit about the differences there.
I would definitely say one thing that a lot of guys can do is like, you can start thinking of like pro ball as like a job, and like, yeah, we get paid to play, but I think one of the big things, like, there's still so like, you don't want to take the fun out of it, because you hear all the time like, hey, like, I'm getting paid to play baseball. Like, at the end of the day, it's baseball. It's a lot of fun. Like, I have so much fun with guys now, and it's so easy to think like, if you're playing professional baseball, like, you're going to treat it like your job, like you're trying to like beat your own teammates, you're trying to be better than your own teammates. And like, to an extent, yeah, but like, you also want to see your teammates succeed so much. Like, it's still very much like a team game. It's awesome. But just like getting to play with guys, and it's almost like a very high level summer ball. Like, I never met any of these guys. We came together, we trained together, we're starting to play games together. But now it's like, we're already we're locked in, we're ready to go. So it's definitely different than like playing with like the same kind of group for like 4 years, because guys can move all around. They can get moved up, they can get traded. Like, there's definitely some different aspects, but at the end of the day, it's baseball. It's a lot of fun. The schedule is like, it's very nice. It's also like, there's no school, so I think that contributes to like why it can feel like a job. But I think I just have to remind myself like, hey, like, it's baseball. At the end of the day, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm getting to play very competitive baseball against some phenomenal baseball players. I'm getting to do it with some awesome teammates that I've known for less than a year. And like, I would call some of these guys like my brothers. Like, right now, I'm living in a house with 3 of the other draft guys. Like, we just finished playing cards for like an hour. We just have so much fun. It's like, it's just like another brotherhood, basically.
Yeah. I feel like you can't think of it as a job. I feel like you've played this game your whole life. You've always thought of it as just, this is something I got to do for fun. You got to go to college to play baseball, and you're like, I'm a student athlete. Like, I'm pretty much just going to class and playing baseball. Like, life's pretty good. I think once you get drafted, I feel like you said, a lot of guys can fall into the idea that it's a job and they're here because they pretty much have to. But I feel like that just takes all the fun out of it. I feel like you've just kind of done a good job of realizing like I'm enjoying it. And with the success that you've had, it's easy to just continue to grow off of it and almost just continue to build that confidence. So what do you think is kind of your mindset going into pro ball now that you are surrounded by, other draftees, a whole bunch of guys that have been really good, and you do need to kind of improve and be better just so you can, get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
What's kind of your mindset on growing while you're there?
I mean, one thing that I think I said earlier is like being with the Marlins, like I'm always surrounded by coaches who want to help me learn. And so you kind of have to be vulnerable and like have conversations with them. Like that was one thing that happened with me when I was in the DR back in November, is like I just had to go to one of the coaches and say, hey, I've really struggled to have some high spin rate, off speed stuff. Like, what are some thoughts? Like, what are some things we can do? And I think if I never had that conversation with him, I would have never, had the pitches that I had now. So like sometimes you'd have to like recognize like, hey, like I know I can improve a lot here, but and like I can do, some research on my own. I can do some stuff on my own, but also just having coach or conversations with coaches who have played in the bigs or played, at the higher levels. Like you just have to be vulnerable, and you can kind of pick their brain, and that's just something that I think is so valuable here. Is like there's always coaches who want to help you. There's always people who want to help make you better. So I think my mindset is like knowing that like I know that I can always get better. So I want to have the conversations. I want to talk to coaches. I want to pick their brains and see where they think that I should be putting my effort in, because they've been there, and they know they've been around baseball longer than I have. Like, so I think that whatever they can provide to me, it's going to be valuable. If I don't disagree with it, like, it's okay. Like, maybe I don't agree with everything, but like I had the conversation. Like, maybe I go out of the conversation with nothing, or maybe I come out with a brand new curveball grip that is now significantly better than the one I had in college, which is exactly the case. And that would have never happened if I never had the conversation, if I didn't have the vulnerability to go say, hey, like, how can I throw a better curveball? So,
Yeah. I think you almost just have to take a step back and realize, like you've said, these guys have plenty of experience. But if you get into that kind of closed mindset where you're like, I'll figure it out on my own, like I don't need your help. And you also have to realize, I mean, you see guys in the big leagues who are always kind of changing things. They'll have a different grip, they'll throw a different pitch, and you're like, where did that come from? They haven't had that. And it is a sport where you kind of just have to continue to work, because the game is getting harder and harder, it feels like, and guys are getting better and better. So I think that's just a great mindset to be in there with, is just figuring out how can you get better. I want to end every conversation with kind of the same question. So if you could go back and say one thing to your younger self, what would it be? Just about the mental game and about the struggles and success that comes in baseball.
I think if I could talk to like my middle school or like high school self, I would say like the biggest thing that I could do is, this might be like a weird answer, but I would like say like arm care is more than just like crushing internal and external rotation, like 3x10. Like so much more goes into taking care of your body, and like it's all about how you structure your throwing, like, not overthrowing on your low days, but making sure you're still building yourself up to be prepared to go. Understanding your lifting schedule, knowing when to keep your high days high, your low days low. Understanding the nutrition, like what should you be having for breakfast, lunch, dinner? Like what are good snacks, what are bad snacks? Like I think that's one thing that is so underutilized, is like having the knowledge of like how to take care of your body. Because I think in high school and even like my freshman year in college, like I'm eating, like chewy granola bars, and I'm drinking soda, and like that's like sometimes like there's times you can't help it, but taking like accountability and like ownership of that stuff, and like keeping yourself healthy is so crucial. And it just becomes even more crucial. Like the season's going to be 132 games long. Like there's a lot of baseball. And like, even though I'm a pitcher, like, so, I'm not playing every day, but like taking care of my body is like, I mean, it's like the saying, the best ability is availability. So just making sure that I'm doing everything that I can do, like to keep myself healthy, keep myself ready. Like, I think that's the first thing I'll tell myself. But then I'd also probably slip in the stuff about like the skill or the sports psychology stuff. Like, hey, here's some breath work, keeps you in the moment. Here are some like words of affirmation you can tell yourself. But I think the first thing I would do is like, here's how you can take care of your body. Because I mean, you only have one. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to give a huge thanks to Nick for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.